anxiety is a symptom of iron deficiency. Anxiety can be a symptom of all sorts of things, but it is a symptom of iron deficiency. So there's that. Then, of course, there's the absorption issue. So for so many people today, they live with chronic inflammation. And I can imagine that you see so many people experiencing that, whether it's from too many lousy lifestyle choices, it might be from injury, so that they live with this chronic inflammation.
So honored to have the incredible Dr. Libby Weaver here with me today. And thank you so much for your time, Libby.
Oh, Jodi, thank you for having me join you on your podcast.
Oh, it's very, very exciting. And I was saying just off recording that iron is one of my most favorite things to talk about, because I feel that we really miss the piece on a lot of intricacies of how we look at iron, how we prescribe iron, and particularly with women and even children. A huge part of my practice is also pediatrics. So it's a big thing. And I am constantly trying to correct and talk and inform clients and about their kids as well in regards to this. So really excited to talk to you about this. So you have an incredible book out. Fix Iron First, which I'm like, yes, go Libby, this is what we need. So tell me firstly a little, because first time on the podcast, so tell me a little bit about you, Libby, and for the audience, where have you come from? Where have you landed in? Why this? Why the passion that you have around nutrition, biochemistry? So tell us a bit of your story first.
Oh, you're so lovely, Jodi. Thank you. And can I just say, health just radiates out of your face and your eyes. It's just, I know we're on Zoom right now, but it's just, yeah, you're so electrified. You're so alive yourself. So it's just, yeah, extra gorgeous to talk to you. So my little bit of my background, and I think it is helpful for people to hear this because it'll help listeners to understand the lens, I guess, through which I look out upon everything when I'm, working with people. So I grew up in Tamworth in country New South Wales, and we lived very simply. We had chickens in the backyard, grew some of our own food, but not much. It was just a small little plot of land in town. And then I went to uni for 14 years, which I know makes me sound really thick and like I failed everything, but I very much love learning. And I still do. So I originally studied nutrition and dietetics and then did honours and then did a PhD in biochemistry. So lots of science there in my background. But since then, I've worked with people one-on-one for 25 years. And that's, as I'm sure you agree, Jodi, that's where you get to see what really makes a difference in people's lives and also what doesn't. And so I've combined my 14 years at uni with my clinical experience to create what I call my 3-pillar approach. And those 3 pillars are the biochemical, the nutritional, and the emotional, or you could say mindset. So I look at everything through those 3 lenses. Yes, and my latest obsession, it kind of has always been my obsession. I just sort of didn't feel like I had the complete story we don't think we ever have the complete story, but I felt like I didn't have a full enough story to share it. But I'm absolutely obsessed with bringing iron back to the top of the pile of the conversation list, because I think for a lot of people, they've forgotten about it. It is the most common nutritional deficiency in the world, and other nutrients have kind of become trendier. Everyone's aware that magnesium matters and vitamin D and creatine's having its moment. So there's all these things that kind of get the spotlight, and we are forgetting about iron, unfortunately. So I want to change that.
Absolutely. And I'm right there with you. And like you say, these things firsthand in clinic, what works, what doesn't, and then why and how the missing pieces are coming in. And as a clinician, you're there trying to advocate as much as you can to get the most incredible changes for the people in front of you. And then when that's not working and you're missing something, then you're driven to go down different avenues and really look at that. Yeah. And I love your 3-pillar approach. I think we can't separate. And once you've worked in practice for some time, you realize there is no difference between the emotion and the physical symptoms that are arising in clients, because they are the same. And whatever chicken and egg it is, it's always arising from all of that together. And then the biochemistry is just, for us nerds, it's just something that really makes us tick. Yeah, so good. So, all right, let's dive into iron. I find that there is a general miscommunication, as you'll expand on for us. And I love that you talk about Hepcidin. Hepcidin does not get the conversation much or at all, really. And I talk to doctors about it, GPs, and they look at me with blank. Like, what? You don't even know how to dose iron? Okay, so talk us through all of it, Libby, like from start to finish, in terms of like what you've seen, why you started to get really passionate, what we see coming from iron deficiency, and then we can dive into the nuances of how we look at it and then prescribe. And then, it's an intricate biochemical setup, isn't it? It's something that takes a lot of consideration in the body. So yeah, talk us through it.
It does. So obviously, the first reason I think that too many people are deficient these days, I actually think inadequate dietary intake is a major contributor. And I think women across the menstruation years especially underestimate how much iron they actually need to meet their requirements. Obviously, if periods are heavier, those requirements can be even greater. But obviously, I'm a fan of getting to the root cause of something. So why is someone having heavy periods in the first place, and let's see if we can change that. But all of that aside, so our iron requirements, obviously, we'll go right back to the start. So when little humans are born, they accumulate iron in their liver in the third trimester of being in mum's tummy. And so if a baby is born prematurely, and also if they're born to a mother with low iron stores, that baby begins life usually without enough iron, certainly without enough iron stores to get them through to around the 6-month mark when complementary foods are introduced. So, and I feel that that's being missed. Obviously, that is a job for pediatricians to address that in those little baby humans, but I feel that almost the awareness of it has fallen away. But then obviously when those foods, solids are introduced around the 6-month mark, I worry that too many mothers aren't aware of how crucial the iron needs are there. So they're around 10, 11 milligrams per day for that little baby human to grow and develop. And when little babies are iron deficient and they grow up that way, their IQ is affected, their cognition, their development, their ability to concentrate and focus. And I worry too, Jodi, to be really frank, I do worry that sometimes as kids get a bit older, they're often diagnosed with a psychological or a psychiatric condition, and iron deficiency is being missed, I think, in too many kids. So our needs as we grow up sort of sit around that 11, 10 milligram mark per day. And then, of course, once menstruation starts for girls, it goes up to 15 and then to 18 milligrams per day. And if someone eats in a vegan or vegetarian way, we have to multiply that RDI by 1.8 for a host of reasons. So not eating enough, I think, is the first thing. And I will just add, I worry hugely, Jodi, about teenage girls because right at a time where they actually require more iron, a lot of them are being influenced, often through social media, to head in a plant-based direction. And you can get enough iron if you eat plant-based, but you really need to know what you're doing to be able to meet those requirements. And they're not getting the education. They're just cutting out meat and thinking that that's the thing to do, and their iron requirements plummet as a result of that right when they need more. Anxiety is a symptom of iron deficiency. Anxiety can be a symptom of all sorts of things, but it is a symptom of iron deficiency. And again, I worry, particularly for those teenage girls, that it gets missed. So there's that. Then, of course, there's the absorption issue. So for so many people today, they live with chronic inflammation. And I can imagine that you see so many people experiencing that, whether it's from too many lousy lifestyle choices, it might be from injury, so that they live with this chronic inflammation. And as you mentioned, one of our favorite subjects is Hepcidin. When there's any kind of inflammation going on, Hepcidin increases. And Hepcidin, a good way for people to think about it, the liver produces it, and it's like the bouncer at the stadium. So it's the dude who says, iron, you're allowed in, or iron, you can't come in. So Hepcidin is responsible for either allowing iron absorption or blocking it. And Hepcidin is increased when we have enough iron already in our body and our iron stores are great. So Hepcidin will naturally elevate, but it will elevate when there's inflammation. So even if someone is doesn't have good iron status, their hepcidin will elevate if there's inflammation going on, and actually block iron being absorbed. So we have to understand that living with inflammation can have all sorts of unfavorable consequences, but one of them is a disruption to really healthy iron metabolism. So I think too, so as far as gut health goes, it can have a dramatic impact as well on whether we absorb iron well or not. So some people they know they have celiac disease. Some people actually find out they have celiac disease because of persistent low iron, or they might have other digestive system challenges that is interfering with iron absorption. When we talk about supplements, I'll go into the actual mechanisms of iron absorption for the different types of iron. But that's another factor. And then, of course, the other reason why people can be low in iron is from significant blood loss. So whether that is through really heavy periods, often through perimenopause, women start to bleed more frequently, or periods can get heavier, and there's more iron loss, of course, when that happens. And if they've got low ferritin, or low in normal ferritin, I call that the backup battery. There's sort of not enough there to keep supply going, and all sorts of other things can be affected. We need iron, for example, to literally be able to produce thyroid hormones. So a really common scenario I've seen is women with persistently low iron or low in normal iron and heavy periods, and then their thyroid starts to underperform in their 40s. And that doesn't come out of nowhere. I see that that's a cumulative effect of what we just kind of put up with, is what too many women just put up with, because it's not a disease, so nothing's diagnosed, so therefore there's no sort of solution or support offered unless they're working with someone like you, Jodi. So there's not that awakening to, oh, what do you mean I don't have to live with this? Really? Do I not have to put up with heavy, painful, clotty periods? What do you mean once my thyroid starts to underperform? Are there things I can do to change that? And obviously iron is one of the things. There are numerous, but iron is one of the big factors that women, I think, need much greater awareness of the long-term consequences of living with not enough of it.
Absolutely. Well, so many pieces to unpack there, but I think the important part I really appreciate you talking about is, I think, the nuances around iron, because I see it's stubborn. I see a lot of women coming back year after year from their doctor, not getting anywhere with the current supplementation. You'll get to that because there's definitely nuance around that. But also just feeling like they can't get anywhere. They get infusions and it straight back down again within a year or two. And it's frustrating. And then also it's taking the impact of having that low iron consistently in the body, that constant demand, like you say, that the body is trying to fight up against. It's not all the building blocks there ready for it. So it's taking away from other organ systems, from other areas. And like we know, it's an essential. Iron is so essential. But in the wrong doses, it can be highly toxic as well.
Yep.
So we need to also consider the issues associated with continual use of these IV therapies with iron, and also dosing the wrong ones. So, but I think what I think a really important part to sort of pull apart is the teenage girls. Now, I've noticed it in my practice, and it's getting scary. I actually had a couple of conversations just this week with parents, and I know anxiety is huge, and we know hormones are shifting. I liken the puberty stage for a woman to be like perimenopause, and generally the mums going through perimenopause have the teenage daughters that are going through puberty, and it's a similar shift in terms of emotions and change and hormones. But what I'm seeing more, and it's devastating, is the anxiety, the social anxiety, the issues with coping. We now have suicide rates on the rise. I'm seeing and hearing some very scary things, particularly around AI. I just saw something come out in the media, but it was a conversation I've had in the last couple of weeks with a client myself. But again, it's like, from what I see in practice, it's can be such easy fixes if picked up, and it's really sad that we need an understanding of how simple a deficiency state of something can become so huge. And it's just, for me, I'm passionate like you. I'm just like, we need to address this, because we're missing and we're losing like beautiful people if we don't actually see this. So I think that's a really important point you made there, is that the puberty stage, and actually equipping our teenagers particularly the women with the coming on of loss of blood, which escalates these symptoms in such a profound way. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about a bit more on mechanisms. Let's talk about, and if you wanted to align this with the types of iron supplementation that you're seeing, also would love your perspective on the IVs, and we can talk about that because it's a very quick to fix scenario that we see a lot. And a lot of GPs I hear commenting to my clients firsthand saying, oh, don't worry, we'll just do this every year, it's fine, you know. And so it's not really that root cause look. So I'd love to hear your perspective on all of that.
Jodi, thank you. Yes. Do you know, so I feel that we're really fortunate to live at a time where we have access to amazing emergency medicine. So obviously an iron infusion can save someone's life, you know, if they find out that it's rock bottom or there's, you know, significant blood loss and a blood transfusion hasn't sorted things. It's really remarkable. But in my opinion, that's when it needs to be used in an emergency. What I worry about is women who don't address what's going on with their own iron status, and they just use iron infusions as their solution. So they don't address either the not eating enough iron-rich foods, they don't address the absorption issues, they don't address the heavy bleeding. So in other words, the things that are actually causing them to be iron deficient, they just go, oh, I'll just have an infusion every 6 to 12 months and that's my way of having enough iron. But when you think, there's all sorts of challenges with that. So firstly, when you have that big infusion, the delivery obviously is straight to the blood. Now iron, just like everything in the body, doesn't act on its own. So for iron to be able to go where it needs to go, to the bone marrow, for example, so that we can make brand new red blood cells, and to blow everyone's minds and to help people to help people be in just a little bit more awe and wonder with their body, we make 2.5 million new red blood cells every second. So it's just extraordinary, and iron needs to be in all of them because those little red blood cells, the iron allows them to carry oxygen to every cell in the body to do its critical work. And life with low energy is pretty challenging. The ripple effect of it is major because it means when we're tired, we may not necessarily go for a walk. We might not feel like we have the energy to cook dinner, so we get takeaway. We might not phone a friend, and so we sit with more feelings of loneliness, or it might be we don't apply for a job promotion, or it might impact the way we speak to the people we love the most in the world. So I feel like people gloss over being tired, and I kind of try and expand the conversation around that a little bit, just to think about what life would be like if more of us lived with better energy, and not just our ability to take care of ourselves and the choices we make in regards to ourselves, but also the way we interact with others, show up with others, or what we believe we're capable of. I think iron is hugely linked to resilience. I think it's hugely linked to confidence. And part of that obviously is through better energy and through those really healthy red blood cells being able to deliver that oxygen. So that's just one little thing. So when we have those iron infusions, the iron alone is not, it's just having iron alone, it's not enough to get it to where it needs to go. So copper and vitamin A are two nutrients that are crucial to really healthy iron metabolism. In other words, once iron is inside you, you then need copper and vitamin A for it to be the iron to be able to go into storage, to be delivered to the bone marrow, to be transported to everywhere it needs to go, including to do things like make thyroid hormones, make neurotransmitters like serotonin and melatonin for sleep, and GABA for the calming factor, and dopamine for motivation. So it's got to be able to get where it needs to go. And when we just have an iron infusion, we're not being given the right amount of copper and vitamin A to help the iron do what it needs to do. A big dose of iron can also induce inflammation itself. It can also create what are called the generation of reactive oxygen species, so essentially free radicals. And the way we protect ourselves from damage against free radicals is we need to consume enough antioxidants, which are essentially in our coloured plant foods, in our veggies especially. And as Australians, we're not very good at eating enough vegetables, but that's a conversation for another day. Anyway, so that's kind of my gist with iron. Oh, sorry, the other point I'd love to make around iron infusions is sure, the levels get topped up, but if you don't then also address why you were deficient in the first place, it will fall again. And you live with for too long with suboptimal iron levels, so that then all the things inside you that iron is needed for, their function is essentially compromised. So it's not a solution in my opinion. The infusions are great for emergencies, but not as a lifestyle choice. That's partly my worry.
Yeah, I totally agree. As you're saying that, I'm also thinking about the way that we test for iron as well. And I think I look at this, and I know you speak about it as well, but with inflammation, obviously can give false readings of some sort. So it always depends on context around testing. But I also question myself the retesting after an infusion and how much inflammation is still present, and therefore how much that's driving false readings, and therefore what is really truly cellular levels and storage levels. And then, therefore suboptimal levels could be a lot longer than we actually think, or actually not even getting a full capacity of iron where we need to. So I think and what I've come to realize over my years of practice and study and looking is that we try to make it simple, but we can't. We have to be looking at the complexities of all these things to make full sense of them all. So yeah, I think that's something that I've been noticing. Have you also? Yeah.
Yes, and that's so beautifully said, Jodi. I think when it can absolutely be falsely elevated, particularly ferritin. So to put that into context for listeners, your blood test might show that your ferritin is 150 after an infusion, but is it really more like 40? And the inflammatory markers, so interleukin-6, one of the inflammatory cytokines, is the one that's known to elevate with the inflammation related to what an iron infusion can do. So is that falsely masking that ferritin level, and it's not actually that high? Maybe it is, but we actually can't know in that case after an infusion.
No, absolutely. Even the current testing, I think, there is maybe even a lot of missed iron according to symptoms. Obviously people are feeling unwell, like you said, there's tiredness, there could be viruses, it could be tested at the wrong time, so it comes back, oh, you're fine, it's not iron. But when you actually then test at a time that they're not inflamed, and you haven't done those cytokine markers at the same time, so you really don't know, and therefore you've completely missed it, and they go for years still without having proper iron levels. So yeah, there's a lot.
There is a lot. And then you add to that if someone's tried one of the old school iron supplements, a lot of women especially get constipated when they take those. And so I've had lots of people say to me, I would rather be iron deficient than constipated. So if they think that those old school iron supplements are the only solution, they'd they don't want to go there. So, and it's why there's a whole new generation of supplements now available that aren't constipating, which I can speak to in a moment. But so people understand that the old school supplements, where they're dosed at a really high level, so some of them are 100 milligrams of iron or even greater in one tablet, and it's just way too much in one dose. So we know that when we have such a large dose of iron orally, it will induce hepcidin straight away. And obviously, as we just talked about, hepcidin blocks iron absorption. So when hepcidin is elevated, it blocks iron absorption. When hepcidin's nice and low, it allows for iron to be absorbed. And large doses of iron will elevate that hepcidin. So, and also too, with those old school supplements, they're usually iron bound to a salt or a chelate. And so when we swallow them, the stomach acid pulls apart the iron from the chelate or the salt, whatever it's bound to. And then that free iron arrives at a cell that lines the small intestine. And on the surface of that cell is I get people to imagine it like a little truck, a delivery truck, it's a transporter, and its big, long, silly name is abbreviated to DMT1. And the iron has to hop on the back of that truck, and the DMT1 will drive it inside the cell. But the trouble with that is, firstly, you need to have enough DMT1 trucks available, and DMT1 trucks are used for the absorption of other minerals like calcium and zinc and copper. So all of those minerals will compete with iron for absorption because they all need the trucks. So we need good number of trucks and no interference from those other minerals at that time. Also, too, once the trucks take the iron inside the cell, the gut cell is then exposed to free iron. And with those old school supplements, it's often a really big dose of free iron, and that floods the gut cell with free iron, driving inflammation, driving the creation of those reactive oxygen species, so those free radicals. And that's part of what creates the gut-related symptoms, the constipation, the nausea, for some people, the pain that they describe from taking those conventional supplements. And then, so we can geek out even further, if you can imagine that the iron is inside a cell that lines the digestive system, I want people to imagine that it's still not in the blood, which is where you need it. It still hasn't got out the back door of the gut cell. And at the back door of the gut cell, a copper-dependent enzyme is needed to actually get the iron out of the cell and transport it. So some people might be getting enough iron, but they're copper insufficient. So there's not enough of those enzymes available to actually get the iron out of the cell and take it to where it needs to go. But the good news is that there are new supplements now available. What I encourage people to look for is ferritin iron, and it's been extracted from peas and then concentrated into supplemental form. And ferritin iron, when we take it as a supplement, we swallow it. It's not reliant on stomach acid for absorption. And too many people today, which is good because too many people today don't have great stomach acid production, I don't think, from persistent stress. And then when the ferritin iron is delivered to the gut cell wall, it's actually absorbed through, it's a geeky name, but receptor-mediated endocytosis. And all that means is the cell reaches out and grabs onto the ferritin cage, which contains all of the iron molecules, and takes it inside the cell. But because the iron is all housed inside the ferritin cage, the gut cell is never exposed to free iron. So you don't get that awful inflammation and reactive oxygen species. And then it's taken into the total iron pool and delivered directly there. So that's very exciting. So if people need supplementation, that is what I encourage them to look for, ferritin iron. And also the beauty with that is the doses. There are clinical trials have been done looking at women with iron deficiency anemia, and they were only given 5 milligrams of ferritin iron per day for 4 weeks, and it got them out of their blood parameters being in that anemia place. And then they kept going for another 5 weeks in that clinical trial, so a total of 9 weeks. And for the 5-week period, they only had 10 milligrams per day of ferritin iron. And again, the improvements in blood levels for every participant was significant. So it's certainly, I think, probably the future of supplementation without those awful side effects.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the limitation of supplementation is a big one. And I see that here in clinic. We don't have availability. I'll look into that ferritin iron as well, because I currently use an iron bisglycinate, and it's good. And I still have to be aware of the fact that we're dosing correctly for, like you've just mentioned and given such a good description on, is we're not rising that hepcidin level. Because again, I'll dose every second day if I need to make sure hepcidin has fallen again and lowest in the morning. So making sure that that's appropriate. But if we're having not high levels of the ferritin, and also that's getting absorbed quickly and not reaching those areas where it's going to start to inflame, then you can dose every day. So yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, very good. Okay. So with again, I think transporter, and then you've got, the trucks, which I love that you explain it in that way. I talk about buses, and I'm like, there's only a certain number of seats on that bus. So I just love that you use it analogy too. But mineral, when we talk about mineral and the competition, a lot of zinc and copper get a lot of time, right? But we don't normally align iron with that in terms of common conversations and ratios that we look at all the time. So I think re-education needs to be around that as well. I find that to be a really, really important piece. In WA, we're quite lucky. We have generally too much copper going on because of our beautiful pipes that are still lying in the ground. But we have to be aware of different factors around that too. But everywhere else in the world, including eastern states of Australia, I find that copper can be a very, very common deficiency. So yeah, I think that is the other things that we think about that aren't so simple. That's that common, connecting pieces that help iron. All right. So the other thing you mentioned a little while ago, and I think I'll bring that back in now just a little bit, is celiac. And so absorption issues, celiac, and then a general inability to absorb these areas that we talk about because of the damage that's been done. And so I see this a lot happening in clinic in higher rates now, as children being diagnosed with celiac. And I think it's all to the fruition of the parents really pushing for that diagnosis. But if not, then it gets missed quite easily. And then, like you mentioned, underdevelopment of children and thinking, hair loss. We have so many symptoms that are associated with iron. So, how do you support and help those who have celiac? Like, what are your recommendations around even dosing iron if they need to, and supporting that? Obviously, there's the healing and removal of gluten. But yeah, what do you look at in clients there?
So firstly, obviously the diagnosis is key. But in saying that, Jodi, I do worry that celiac disease is one of the mechanisms of a reactivity to gluten that we understand pretty well now. But what if there are 20 others or 50 others and we don't know those mechanisms yet? So for me, just because someone may test negative to actual celiac disease, if their gut-related symptoms vastly improve when they eliminate gluten-containing foods, then for me, the body doesn't lie. So it might not, and if they've been tested for celiac disease and it's negative and yet a lot of their gut-related symptoms improve, I would still say to that person, you are much better off eating in a gluten-free way, just because we don't have a test right now that can work out whatever your mechanism of sensitivity is. And it might be lifelong, but it also might not be. So with some other gut healing kind of work, whether that is actually really focused on the gut or if that's more emotional, because you might for obviously so many people, their gut related symptoms kick in after the chronic production of stress hormones after some really tough times, or it might kick in after they travel to a foreign country and they get food poisoning, or they drink water and they get what they would think of as just food poisoning, but then their gut function is never the same again. We see celiac disease itself triggered obviously after some kind of infection. That's incredibly common now. So whatever it is that is leading to the person to not be able to digest gluten well, whether it's full-blown celiac disease or not, the omittance of gluten, I think, is obviously a key step for some, not all, but for some people to actually heal their gut. So that's the first thing I would say. And then when to use iron, I am a food first person. We can't do everything with food anymore. I'm the first person who wishes we could get everything we need from food, but I no longer believe that's the case. Obviously once iron levels are really deficient, we need to be very careful for someone who has celiac disease or is abstaining from gluten. We need to make sure those iron levels are actually improving, because for so many of them, they've lived with low iron for such a long time. And so I say to people, if you find out you are iron deficient and also have celiac or decide to go gluten-free, whatever changes you make, whether it be to what you're eating or your supplementation, you want to retest your blood in 3 months to make sure what you're doing is actually working. What you don't want to do is think, oh, well, now I don't eat gluten, or now I've been diagnosed with celiac disease, my iron will just naturally come right. It may or it may not. But you could live for another couple of years with lousy iron status if you don't actually go and find out. You need to know that your gut is healing and that your iron status is actually improving. So I think a blood test after about 3 months after diagnosis is important. And then sometimes 4 blood tests in that year is actually, I think, key to actually seeing if the person's iron status is actually responding.
Absolutely. I think, again, you make a really good point in that there is so much else that we don't know in relation to our immune system. And what is the chicken and egg? They may already be iron deficient, and therefore immune system, is low. There is a deficiency in the immune system, and therefore, autoimmune is on the rise. We all know it. It's just, incredible how quickly it has accelerated in our life. And we know that it's a combination of so many different things. You know, we can talk about the chemicals or preservatives, we can talk about EMF, we can talk environmental, mold, etc., etc. We can go on forever. Again, another time conversation. But when we're looking at celiac, again, there could be so many different triggers that we don't know. Yeah, and there is ways that I look at some sensitivities, and we can do intolerances, food testing, but it's not, again, like they shift. So an already reduced immune function or a hyperactive immune system, it's going to be firing on all cylinders at everything. So it will change and shift accordingly. So yeah, it's really it's I think the guidance of the right support, and like you said, the constant check-in, yeah, it's incredible to keep doing that. So I think it's hard for people to hear this. Yeah.
And it's actually, so the mucosal immune system, if people can imagine your mucosal immune system lines all of the surfaces where there are orifices that are essentially exposed to the outside world. And so it's, you know, in your nasal passages, it's in your digestive system. So that mucosal immune system actually has a really strong relationship with great iron status. So it is far more robust when we have good iron status. Its function is depleted when we are iron depleted. So those two, there's very good research looking at that. So particularly for the gut, that our good iron status is just so crucial.
Yeah, I really like some of the microbiome studies that are coming out with iron as a big focus point as well, which is so interesting. And it's you sort of go, oh well, of course, you know, the gut has everything to do with everything, but then you don't realize until the research actually comes out, and you're like, boo.
There it is.
Yeah, I should have known that. Yeah, of course. Okay, brilliant. So let's talk a little bit more about specificity. And I know you've mentioned like ideal iron supplements, but sort of what are you seeing across the board of people being given, you know, Ferrograd C, you know, you've mentioned that there's a ferritin. What if they can't get that? What are best ways to support in terms of supplementation, and what's the best thing not to be doing? Maybe we can just clear that up a little bit before we move on.
Yeah. So the research, if you're going to use so the ferritin iron that I talked about, it's from organic peas. So it's actually from food. So the bioavailability is exceptional. So if you can get your hands on that, it is by far the best that we have. So, but if you're taking a synthetic iron supplement, it needs to be less than 24 milligrams per dose. And if you're using a synthetic one, it needs to be every second day. The research shows fairly consistently, there is a little bit of conjecture that there was not a big significant difference between daily and every second day. But at the moment, the research still leans towards every second day supplementation. And as you mentioned, Jodi, morning absorption is better than afternoon because hepcidin is naturally lower in the morning. So what I would encourage people to avoid, though, are those high dose synthetic supplements that cost about $2 at a discount pharmacy. So because there's huge amounts of iron in them that is just going to become free iron in your gut cells. I worry that damages the gut. I worry that it does create gut-related symptoms for too many women. So then they're not going to keep taking it anyway. So then they'll just live with iron deficiency because I worry that people try those hideously high dose, super cheap synthetic supplements and think, oh, I tried that, it didn't work, or I tried that and it upset my tummy, so I'm just going to have to live with iron deficiency. No. You want to find a food forward way, an iron supplement that actually supports you and that you actually get results from. So yeah, the no are those high dose synthetic ones, essentially.
Okay. I think I need to drop your book at every single doctor's office around the world, because I feel like I'm banging my head up against the wall most of the time. Like, I still don't understand. I get on my horse about this a lot. I still don't understand why GPs front-facing, and I get it. It's acute care, it's acute medicine, but they're the ones generally they get the first time, you know, blood results, and then they make the recommendations. Even pregnant women, or prenatally trying to prepare, and they get on the iron as a prevention, and it's always the wrong iron, and so I know it's an education missing piece. You know, there's still that original education that's there, but surely there's some research that they can stay up to date with. Like, what's your perspective on this? Because it frustrates the hell out of me.
Well, I wrote the book mostly for consumers and just so women are better armed. But I take your point. It's I need to deliver it to practices. They're very busy. They have a lot on their plates. I guess they don't create the space to stay up to date on a lot of them on research. It's not really. I think too we expect a lot from our GPs that isn't always their training, and we probably need to diversify sort of what we expect to get. They're not trained in nutrition. It's 2 hours or something. So it's getting nutrition information probably from other places. Yes, we need our blood work done through our GP, although you can request them privately as well these days, which is great, but you do need someone who will interpret the results for you. But in saying that, another big worry, Jodi, is not just the lousy quality supplements that are potentially being recommended through GPs' offices, but it's also the way blood tests are interpreted. So when people have iron studies tested, it's 4 different tests, as you will be familiar with. So we test serum iron, which is more a reflection of what you've just eaten or supplementation. There's transferrin, which is actually elevated in iron deficiency and iron deficiency anemia. So transferrin is, again, like a taxi that drives iron around. So the body will create more taxis in an attempt to get more passengers, the passengers obviously being the iron. So I think people can get confused when they have iron studies tests done, because they might see transferrin is high and they think, oh, that's related to iron, I must have too much iron. But no, transferrin is not iron. It's a transporter. It's a taxi for iron. So the normal range in Australian and New Zealand pathology labs for adult women for transferrin is 2 to 3.6 grams per litre. But I like to look at optimum amounts. And in my experience, once transferrin goes above about 2.6, so that's still inside the normal range, it's a sign that the body is seeking more iron. So you don't necessarily, depending on other parameters in these iron studies, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to supplement, but it means it's encouraging you to focus on getting enough iron from wherever your food or a supplement, whatever the case. So above 2.6, you can sort of see it as a sign of iron hunger, if you like. And certainly once it's out of the normal range, elevated, it's the body's saying, give it to me now. The other, in the iron studies blood test, it will also measure transferrin saturation. So that's how many passengers are in the taxi. And then of course, ferritin, and ferritin is your iron storage. So the normal range for adult women in Australia and New Zealand right now is 20 to 220 micrograms per litre, which is a crazy large normal range. And we need to have normal ranges because it would be chaos without them. But in my experience, that lower end of the normal range is way too low. So as I said earlier, think of ferritin in your body, your ferritin that we do a blood test for, think of that like your backup battery. And there's literature to support this, but it's certainly my clinical experience that once ferritin is below 50, a lot of women feel really flat and there's just not enough there in the backup tank, particularly if they're having heavy bleeds. So I like ferritin the optimum range of ferritin, I think, is between 50 and 150. But certainly for women, let's say you get a blood test back and your ferritin is 22 and you'll be told it's normal, because it is in the normal range, but most women don't feel great when their ferritin is that low.
Yeah, absolutely. Libby, you're so translatable the way that you explain things, and I really, really appreciate it from a point of view as it's really hard to explain this in an easy, understandable way, and it's just so translatable the way that you do this. And I think it just makes it so much easier for people to understand, to make action, to speak about it. So thank you, because I just listening to you talk about all of this, it's just, the knowledge, you have such an incredible knowledge, but you're able to say in ways that need to be translated to everyone. And even those who know about biochemistry, sometimes we don't get exposed to this all the time.
Thank you. That's really kind. I try to do that. Actually, when I was doing my PhD, at the end of every year, you have to present all your data. And so it's to this geeky room of the whole faculty. And so I did that. And at the end of it, one of my professors said, I want you to do that now like you're on the 6 o'clock news. In other words, present it so that an ordinary person who's not a scientist could explain it. And it was so confronting, but I was in front of a whole room of people. And so I had to do it. And I thank him for putting me on the spot like that now, because it also made me realize so much gets wasted if we can't say it in a way that everyone can understand and that makes this kind of stuff accessible. So yeah, that was a confronting little moment, but one that taught me a lot. So I really appreciate you saying that, Jodi. Thank you.
Yeah, no, just such beautiful clarity. And you have news voice, which is good. Like, swear you've been on Channel 9 before. I'm sure you have.
Well, I love doing these. I love having these long form chats, and yeah, your questions are amazing. So thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. So now I wanted to check in with, so firstly, before we sort of wrap this up, because I'm aware of timing, and I want to make sure that everyone knows where to find you, your books and all your information. But what I want to cover off first is performance and iron, because I see a lot of high performers, and women particularly in the sports. I'm really advocate of women in sports because it doesn't get enough attention as it deserves. But what I notice obviously is iron is a big problem with men too, actually, in sport. So comments around that. What have you found? What do you recommend? What do you see?
Yeah, so again, another group who often don't know about the importance of iron. They can be low in iron and not know that. It obviously affects performance, particularly because of iron's role in the oxygenation of tissues. But also too, when you think about what you're asking your heart to do when you exercise, the heart obviously is pumping blood, and that blood contains those red blood cells that have got to deliver the oxygen to every little cell inside you. So when we get short of breath sooner than we otherwise would, and you think that doesn't really match with my fitness and the way that I'm training, you want that to be a red flag of, I need to get my iron tested. Or if you notice that your recovery starts to become compromised, don't just think, oh, I think a lot of people think they write so much off to age. I've even had 25-year-olds say to me, oh, it's because I'm 25 now, but it's not. It's just feedback that something needs tweaking. So when your recovery starts to become poor, for example, but yeah, so with any kind, people sometimes don't think of themselves as athletes, but they train like they are athletes. So even if you don't connect with that word, if fitness is very important to you and you train a lot, the research is very clear that iron requirements can be up to 1.7 times the RDI, depending on your level of training. Not so much with weight training. It's not really shown to have a big impact on iron status. But the endurance runners especially, they're the ones that need to be especially mindful. There was a study done on female rowers, and the level of iron deficiency anemia in female rowers was really significant. And yeah, the impact on their health, how often, think about sickness too, obviously. We can't train when we're sick, so it can disrupt, training, preparation for an event or a competition. So yeah, it's a big one to watch out for, I think. And athletes are usually really focused on protein, and as I said earlier, kind of jokingly, creatine's having its moment. So lots of people are very focused on that right now, and iron is just getting missed in so many populations, but including our athletes.
Yeah, they're a tricky demographic to work with. I like the challenge, but they definitely are stuck in their ways and their belief systems. Yeah, they're fun. They're fun to break through.
They're lucky to have you, though, just, dropping little threads of goodness or insight or prompting them to reconsider some things. They're lucky to have you, Jodi.
Oh, thank you. I had a funny one actually. Before coming on here, I had a client before who I know from years ago. I saw her, and she's Iron Woman triathlete. So she loves intensity sport. She's now got 2 young kids under 2. So now she's gone in different intensity sport. And I said to her today, I was like, oh, so what have we got coming up? And she's like, oh, I've got a half Ironman coming up. I'm like, I knew it. And she's like, no more after this. And then I said, oh, okay, there's really cool, like, you just want to do running, yeah, don't you? Oh, so many cool, like 100K, like massive runs. She's like, yes, that would be amazing. I'm like, got you. I'm definitely going to do something after this. She's like, oh no.
And obviously having had 2 children, and given that, created a whole new blood supply for 2 new humans, and that training, that is, key person to watch iron levels in. Absolutely.
I know. So I'm interested to see what her testing says when it comes back. So yeah, it's just so funny. I love working with clients. They light up our lives. So it's so good. All right. So Dr. Libby, tell us where we can find you, what your books, where we can find your books online, websites, Instagram, all of that stuff.
Oh, thank you, Jodi. So my website is drlibby.com, so drlibby.com. My books are there. Some of my books are in bookshops, but yeah, they're all on my website as well. Fix Iron First, The One Thing That Changes Everything is my latest book. And then I also have a supplement company that's all made from food, and it's called BioBlends. And the Instagram is the Dr. Libby and also BioBlends, so people can have a look there.
Incredible. Well, thank you again so much for your time, expertise, and having this fun iron conversation with me.
Oh, thank you for caring so much, Jodi. It's just been delightful to chat. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right, I'll see you soon.